Okay, and action. Welcome to episode 4 of Hot Copy, the personalization paradox. Today we're talking about how to scale personalization without losing the human touch. I'm here with Jess Haney and Codi Smith today. Codi, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, I'm Codi Smith. I work in health and wellness e-commerce. I specialize in cold traffic and I help businesses grow and scale with advertorials.
Cool, thanks. And Jess?
Hello, I'm Jess Haney. This is my first time here. I'm so excited. I am a lifecycle email strategist. I work with B2B software companies who have free trials, and what I do is I do the strategy and the copy to help you convert from more free trials into paid accounts.
Thanks. And I am Katie Peacock, backend sales strategist for coaches and course creators. I help you maximize the lifetime value of the customers you already have. All right, so today we're talking about personalization. And as conversion copywriters, we have known for years that personalization can boost conversions. But now that automation and AI are making personalization ubiquitous. The question is, how do we scale personalization so that it feels personalized, but not creepy, not less human, and not almost counteracting what we want it to do by really alerting the person receiving it that it was not done by a human being. So today we're diving into how automation, segmentation, and empathy can all coexist and why the best marketers might be the ones who know when not to automate. So, to kick us off with our quick fire, I'd just love to hear your cringiest experiences with personalization. And um, I know, Jess, I think you had one ready. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it's super cringy to anybody who's like outside of the software world probably. But I'm having this experience right now actually with a software that I signed up, I paid for, and they have me still inside their free trial onboarding. So they're talking about all of these things and saying like we're going to be upgrading you to a paid account, which I love because that's something I recommend. But I'm like, I'm already upgraded to a paid account. And then they're telling me about things that I've already done. So to me, that's like such a lack of personalization that to me that's cringy. They should know. And it just every time I'm getting their emails, I'm like, why? Why are you doing it this way? And it's just driving me nuts.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because it's similar to what I had in mind, in that the goal of personalization is really to bring you closer to the person, to make an experience feel more intimate. And when I think of my cringiest personalization experience, it's actually a coach that I knew personally, I had worked with extensively. And I bought one of her, like, I'd been in a group program, I'd been in a mastermind, we were very friendly. And then I bought one of her products, and obviously when I put in the name that matches my name on my credit card, it was Catherine, not Katie. And that must have updated in her software which name I was referred to by when it says hello first name. And it was so jarring for me to have that distance. Like, it was like a step backwards in the relationship. So, like you're saying, you want the personalization to make you feel closer to the person. But actually, for me, that was like, oh, I'm surprised that nobody, like, there was no check or there was no like verification of like, this is a valued customer. Do we not want to maintain that customer experience?
That is so interesting because I'm trying to think of how would you logistically do that,
Hmm.
right? Just like as a back end curiosity, like how would you make sure that things like that don't get overridden?
Yeah,
So yeah, that's I'd
I
never even
totally
thought
agree.
of
And
it.
I think maybe that we can come back to that at the personalization at scale segment because I was trying to think too of a few ways that you could, I mean, like there's the human, there's bringing the human into it.
Correct.
But could you automate that? Could you have maybe a form field that's like, what's your preferred, like, what would you prefer we call you?
Mhm.
Or, is there a way to build in like a stopgap measure to stop that from happening?
Because even if there's like typically when you're buying something, there's the who is this for? And then it's the payment section, which that's where you put in like my government name. And so, yeah, just making sure you have both of those form fields on your checkout and then grabbing that first one versus the second one.
Yeah.
Because for me, when I buy things, because I'm incorporated, I'm putting in my corporation name. So that would be wild if somebody sent me an email and was like, "Hello, your corporation name."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the same thing if you get something that's like first name, last name.
Yes,
Mhm.
It undoes the personalization and it makes it more, it adds more distance.
Mhm.
correct.
Yeah,
But yeah,
because
I
when you're
think
talking, yeah, I was gonna say when you're talking to a friend, you don't address them with their first and their last name. So, like you said, it creates more distance. It makes it feel like people don't really know you, or that there's not that like intimate connection between you and the person that you're talking to. So, I
Hmm.
totally agree. Yeah, mine's a little bit different because I am in e-commerce. I'm always looking at emails, abandoned cart emails specifically. And I think the most cringiest one yet is the subject line is like still thinking it over. Let's make it easier. Like they're just assuming that I want this already. And then when they wrote the body part of the copy, they're like, we saw that you were checking out product name. And then I was like, oh, you did. You saw that I was doing this. I thought that was a little bit cringy because yeah, we as marketers, we do see what people are doing, but the last thing we want to do is let people know that we know that. There's already a lot of skepticism. So you've probably seen comments on Facebook where people are like, um, they're creeped out with the ads that target them because they'll say like dog food and then they're targeted with dog food, right? And they're like, how'd that happen? So it's kind of similar to that in your inbox, except for it's not obviously in your ads when people know that you are watching them, they don't like that. It feels like Big Brother is watching them. And so I think that's a huge turnoff. But yeah, I think that's probably my most cringiest moment is just we saw that you were looking at this product. And yeah.
yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think
Yeah.
that is a perfect segue into our next segment, which is about walking that line between caring and creepy. So, I'd love to talk about this, as experts, as consumers on the internet who also experience um, like that caring versus creepy. And here, as you were saying, Cody, right? Personalization is not just like the content of the email, it's also the content that you're seeing online based on whatever cookies and behaviors marketers are tracking. So you mentioned that idea of maybe not openly acknowledging the fact that we're watching you. Um, I had something weird happen this week where I opened an email from a friend. She mentioned a podcast she'd been on. I was in the process of researching podcasts, so I copy pasted that podcast name into my spreadsheet and the next thing I know, I open Facebook and I see an ad for that person.
Hmm.
That creeped me out because I was like, why is my clipboard informing the ads that I'm seeing?
Mm-hmm. That is
I
pretty.
feel I would feel like that's a coincidence
Would
personally. If
you?
I experience, yeah, I would be like, whoa, that's a crazy coincidence. Just knowing how things are linked. And yes, I think software is fast. I don't know that it's that fast.
But don't you think that the content of our inboxes is already informing what ads we see? I don't trust Gmail enough not to be using what I'm signed up for to inform what ads I'm getting.
I think that the cookies on the person's website would know that yes, you got put into their email list, and then based on the pages that you visit on their website, they can target you based on different levels of like awareness, essentially. And so I think that person's ads would know that they are emailing with you. They would know what pages you visited on the website.
But the person whose ads I saw isn't the person whose list I was on. She was just mentioned. She was
Oh.
mentioned in the email.
Okay, that is mega creepy. I misunderstood.
Yeah, well,
I
that
would block
and
them.
yeah. To me, that's that. To me, I'm like, that's weird.
Yes.
It is weird.
So if we're
Whoa.
advising clients
Okay.
on how to get the most out of personalization or how to, use this, like use personalization for good and not evil, which obviously in marketing is always a blurry line.
It's like an oxymoron.
Yeah. Where do we see like the caring side blurring into the creepy side?
I feel like I have so much to say on this. Can I jump
So,
in?
yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
Cody, you go, because yeah, you
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to I just wanted to know, like, okay, what do you mean by caring, blurring into creepy? Like, is that, can you give me an example of what you meant by that?
Totally. So when I talk about like using personalization in your backend emails to the customers you already have, I really frame it as being supportive, not salesy. Because if you're going to pitch customers that you've already acquired, they want you to use the data you already have, like what you already know about them, to tailor
Mhm.
that pitch to them because they don't want irrelevant offers. They want you to, like a friend, you're not going to be like, oh, friend who I know is gluten intolerant, like let's go for pasta tonight, right? Like you want to be
Mhm.
using the knowledge you have about that person to make useful suggestions. So to me, that's an example of personalization being supportive, like intentional, thoughtful, versus when you're like, hey, I don't know, maybe a creepy example would be like, hey, um, like I noticed you're only buying products that are under $27, like buy my $15,000 mastermind, but I'll give you a 5-year payment plan or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, something where it feels more serving you versus serving them.
Yeah, so mostly when you're talking about the offer, at least in that example.
Yeah,
So then I would say that personalization can also happen before you ever write anything because it happens in the research. So when you're doing voice of customer research, you're finding, you have your persona. That's going to be really important because you can't personalize something if you're speaking to everyone, right? And a lot of people do that. So while you're doing your research, what you can do is find the words that they're actually using, understand like what they're saying behind what they're actually saying, right? So the subtext of what they're saying so that you can understand them at a deep level. That way, when you are writing to them, they feel like you know them better than they know themselves. But it's not creepy because it feels so natural when they're reading it versus, the all the creepy stuff out there. So I think that's one really cool way to make sure things aren't creepy, but they still resonate with who it is that you're talking to.
I think that's such an important point to bring it back to that foundational research that you don't necessarily have to be tailoring it to one specific person if you're doing research that's deep enough to make it sound like you know what's going on in their head.
Yeah, totally.
Hmm.
Go on.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is I think the and this it's so hard to say this because it's so subjective, but I think the line between caring and creepy is the intent, really. Is like, why are we going to these lengths to do all this personalization? Is it because we're here to, like, we're doing this to genuinely help somebody on their journey and guide them along? So if it's with the use of a tool, I think hyper personalization is caring. I don't think it's creepy at all unless you're like, I don't know, if you were to like send them an email and be like, "Hey, I saw you spent 36 minutes inside your account last night and you got nothing done. And so, like, you're obviously lost and need our help. I think that would be really creepy. But if it was like, hey, you know, maybe you need some extra help without saying that part about, we saw that you spent a lot of time in there, you were clicking around, you didn't achieve anything, you're throwing up these flags that you need extra support, come to our webinar or book a call with our team, right? It's like, what's the intent? And then, of course, how do we communicate it?
Mhm.
But I think if the intent is really, and I think if the intent is good, then that's going to be caring. Like that's going to put it onto that caring place. And I think this goes back to a lot of people get hesitant about sales because they think it's being pushy. And if you actually think that the product or the service that you're selling is going to improve your customer's life, then like you're doing them a disservice by not selling. And I think it's the same thing with personalization. You're doing people a disservice by not putting in the work to personalize their journey and the words that they're seeing and just the ways that you're showing up for them. Because if you're doing it right, you're actually going to be helping them along in what they're
Yeah.
trying to achieve.
I totally agree. And actually sparks an idea or a thought in my mind when you said that about being salesy and using personalization so that it's not salesy. I think the more personalization that you have, the less hype you need because then you know so much about them. Like you said, the sale just pretty much comes more naturally. It doesn't have to feel like a slimy sale at that point. Instead, it's just like the natural progression of where they are and where they want to be, like in gap selling, right? Um,
Hmm.
and a lot of direct response marketers can make things be a little odd, when people are reading stuff because they use so much hype that if they just leaned a little bit more to personalization and not hyping it up so much, then I think it would also build trust. But like you said, it would make the sale less slimy and more natural. And I think that's an important point to remember.
Hmm.
I think what's been really interesting about this conversation is how much what we've talked about is not about tactics, like personalization tactics, like how to implement it. But it's about, like Cody mentioned, that research that you're doing, and Jess talking about moments where your user or your customer might need additional support. So understanding that user journey really well so that you can be looking for the behaviors that indicate, what type of support or what expansion offer might be most relevant for them. So, with that foundational work being necessary for this to, come across well, I'm curious what you guys think. So, like reacting to the statement, if we do it grade nine debate style, be it resolved that personalization should be a priority for founders. Like how high would you rank this work for a business owner or for a SaaS founder, in the context of their overall like sales and marketing strategy?
Ooh, I'm going to
Yeah.
say like fully agree. Rank of importance. Now, this is where I get into like, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff to do when it comes to like your sales and marketing. Um, I would say basically once you figured out who your ICP is, what they actually care about, you've nailed down your offer, and you're starting to like bring people in, then it's like that's where personalization starts to come in. So like you got to hit the ground running and you're just kind of things can be a little bit of a mess at the start, but then the faster you implement personalization, the faster you're going to grow. You're going to get better results, better testimonials, and that you can use. It's like this continuous feedback loop. So I would say like if you're not at the very beginning of your journey with your sales and your marketing, then and you haven't done any personalization, it needs to like as you're watching this, you should like literally leave this video and go work on your personalization.
Okay, I want to ask another question about that, but I'm curious, Cody, what's your take?
I think that I do fully agree that founders should focus on personalization. I think Jess made a really good point though, about, if you're just like a startup, you're just, getting like in the swing of things, then, it can be a little messier. But once you really know your positioning though, and you know who it is you're targeting, you know your ICP, then you really want to make sure that you're narrowing it into that person or those personas that you might have, because again, we all know as copywriters that when you are speaking to everyone, you are literally speaking to no one. And it just makes a really good point when she says you'll get better testimonials. It's 100% true. I've seen this firsthand working with companies. They had all these testimonials that they just they didn't have this like golden thread to them, right? So they weren't all very similar. So, you know, their conversions obviously were a lot lower because they had people talking about one thing and this other person didn't resonate with that. So the more that you can dial that in, the higher your conversions are going to be, the better experience people will have, and the more sales you're going to end up having. So I agree. I think that it's very important. If I had to put it on a number scale, I would say that once you have everything figured out, you definitely a 9 or a 10. You need to start doing personalization, at least to some extent.
Hmm.
Okay, so just to, I think I will be the annoying person on this call. So
Hmm.
when we're talking about personalization, though, what both of you have mentioned sounds to me a bit like the rule of one, right? We want to have a very clear who is this for? We know a lot about them. We're writing to that specific person. So, on a scale of complexity, right? I would say the lowest level of complexity of personalization is just being really dialed into who are we personalizing this offer for and writing copy to that one specific person. And like you said, Cody, tailoring the testimonials that are on the page to that one specific person. And then just kind of what you were saying, higher up on the level of complexity, but still not very far, might be like an early segmentation strategy, an early segmentation email so that your follow-up emails are tailored to that reader. But how high a priority should it be to me to, as a founder, for example, to have a level of personalization where I have multiple versions of my sales page, where I have, maybe dynamic testimonials that are tailored to what I know about that specific visitor to that page. I guess I'm like, how complex, if we're talking to different stage founders, like what should we be aiming for based on how far along we are? What's love to hear your thoughts.
I think that, if somebody's been around and established for a while, you can really start experimenting with those different dynamic landing pages and content like that. I don't think it's necessary for somebody who is just starting because you don't have enough data yet. So I think that the more data you have, the better chances that, you could be doing something like this successfully. So I think it really boils down to how much do you know about the people that you are selling to, and is it worth it at that point then to create these dynamic content pages and stuff like that. So that's really what it boils down to, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Hmm. No, I completely agree. And I mean, I'm an email strategist, so that's the lens that like I view all of this in. I would say figuring out your segments and personalizing through email should, in my opinion, be the top priority. And then working on individual landing pages and having dynamic content that like updates using a software. Because you have so much flexibility within email where you can start to tag and segment based on in-app actions, things that they're clicking on in emails. You could even just send out a self-segmenter email where you give somebody two options and you're like, which one resonates most? Obviously, you would say it better than that, but that's the gist of it. And you're saying, here's option one, here's option two, and they click one and they actually just come out and tell you. It's not you having to like follow them around throughout the whole internet and throughout your whole tool and seeing what they do. You're literally just saying, hey, we're trying to make your experience better. Tell me A or B. They pick A, they go into this segment. They pick B, they go into this segment. And now you've at least just like started, and we're not worrying about landing pages. And I feel like that's such an easier way to get started. And then all of the data and all the findings that you get from doing this and starting off that way, because maybe with an A, then you are trying to figure out through clicks, well, do in A, do they belong to group one, two, or three? Right. And then you can start segmenting from there. And like Cody said, finding out which of those segments is actually worth going ahead and building and writing all of this new landing page content for specific audiences where other ones might not be like so important to do that.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So big focus on kind of where you are in your growth stage, how, yeah, because I'm assuming if you have if an offer is still in development, that segmentation process is going to be a lot more in flux. Like you're experimenting, you're testing as you go, versus if you have an established offer, you know exactly who your ICA is, you are speaking to a very clear buyer who you know sees success with your tool or with your product, that there's a bigger potential ROI for going deeper into that complexity. But as you pointed out, Jess, there are some really good low-hanging fruit that business owners at all stages would be amiss to just ignore.
100%.
Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, I really like what Jess said though, because it's like the best way to get data and then you can use it on landing pages because if you're doing like voice of customer interviews, that's not nearly as I guess useful when it comes to building a landing page that's dynamic. I mean, you're gonna still use the stuff that you get in your interviews and VOC, of course, but like she said, you're just getting deeper into like understanding what they actually care about. And we're not talking about just people in general. We're talking about your specific customers because everybody's customers are different. And if you have them on your list, then they are your leads, your customers, and they might be like they might care about things that, you might be selling something similar to somebody else, but your customers might care about something totally different. And
Mm,
so by using email like that, that's a big leverage in my opinion.
totally
A
agree.
100%. And one thing that kind of sparked in my mind, and knowing who your customers are and what they care about and what they're actually doing. So going back to the conversation about abandoned carts, I did work for a company who sold like home furnishings. And one of the things that would happen, and with abandoned cart, I hate seeing the play where people are like, looks like you forgot something. Like people aren't just like browsing something and then completely forget like, oh, I was browsing for this and then they go away. Like that's not a thing anymore. And so it's like trying to think about what are your actual customers doing that are preventing them from continuing the purchase. And so for this home furnishing company, um, we knew that whenever people were checking out wall art and they abandoned their cart, it usually came down to either them having to get their partner's permission for does this style suit what we're looking for, or are the measure like what size do we need to
Right.
fit where we're going? So following that up with like for this specific company, and this wouldn't work for a coach, right? A
Mm,
coach wouldn't be able to go and say, hey, grab your measurement, like send us use our interactive tool to figure out what size of wall art you need, right? And this is where personalization can become really supportive and it's not creepy because we knew that about their customers. And
Yeah.
so using that kind of information and just trying to think deeper of like, what does my customer or my lead need at this time, whether it is e-com, whether it is a tool, whether it is a coach selling coaching programs or courses or one-on-one coaching packages, just like showing up in that caring way because you actually know things about them.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Which kind of goes back to like our copywriting, like conversion copywriting process, right? Which is survey your audience, understand your audience, and how would you know that if you didn't ask, right? So a lot of personalization
Mhm.
comes back to finding out what your audience cares about and how do you do that? There's multiple ways, but surveys, interviews, voice of customer, like looking in your support tickets, things like that. So I think that's really important. And I think we're just going to keep coming back to that because personalization, how are you going to be able to personalize something if you don't know anything about the person that you're selling to?
Mhm.
Hmm. And I was at a conference last week and somebody said, somebody in the audience said, how like I can't get my ICP on the phone. I can't get a hold of them to have these interviews or do these calls. And the person on the stage said, if you can't get them on a call, you can't sell them.
Hmm.
If you can't find them, you can't sell them. So if this is actually true, you need to find a new ICP because how are you going to sell them? And it was like a jaw on the floor moment for me because I've often thought that too, where I'm like, well, I can't get a hold of these people. But then it's like, how are you going to sell them? And so putting in that work, it like is tedious and it does sound like a lot of work, but it's going to pay off tenfold.
Mm-hmm.
Easy.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Hmm.
I think it's really
Very.
interesting that a lot of like as you said, Cody, we keep coming back to those foundational conversion copywriting principles, and we keep coming back to this like to get that ROI from personalization, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a lot of complex, tools and tactics going on. It really is like, how well do you know your audience? How well have you gotten in their heads? Do you know where to find them? Do you know what's going on for them at various stages of your customer journey?
Mhm.
I'm gonna take us over. So we've talked about the foundations. We're getting more tactical now. This is the part where we talk about our test lab. So tangible tactics. Oh, no, that's too far. There we go. How do you keep the human touch at scale? So I think this will, you know, go back to some of the things we've been talking about, but like I'm doing that foundational research. That's going to allow me to know my customer really well. What are some techniques or strategies that founders, coaches, ecom businesses can use to make their automations or their marketing feel personalized without it feeling, without giving that cringy vibe that we talked about at the beginning?
I have something to say.
Go ahead.
With e-commerce, there's a lot of emails that go out that are purely like design. And so I think one way that we can make it feel more personalized to people is if we write more narrative style emails and start blending the two more often than just having the designed emails, because that feels not nearly as personalized or you feel a little distant from it, right? So, yeah, that's the thing that sticks out to me the most.
I love that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, for me, the lens, of course, again, that I'm looking at this through is software. But when I think about starting to personalize and really starting to build it up to a certain scale, I think of it like a big funnel. So what's kind of like the biggest piece that we could look at, and then how do we go down deeper and deeper in our levels to get more granular so that we can get like even more personalized. So at the top with software, B2B or B2C, like are your consumers in the B2B or in the B2C world? They're going to be buying and looking for completely different things. They're going to have different levels of sophistication. That's like if your software serves both those customers, easiest like layup to
Mhm.
just separate those two. And then we go down a step deeper and we're like, okay, well, if we're looking on B2B, what is your role? Are you in marketing? Are you in sales? Are you in operations? All of these different people speak different languages. They need different things. They're going to be using your tools for a different reason. And then if we go down deeper from there, it's like, are they the ones using the tool or like on their own? Or are they using it with a team? Because those are going to need completely different things. And then we go down deeper from there. And that's when we can get into like product led personalization, which is looking at what they're actually doing in the tool. So if your tool does three main things, looking at what's the first thing that they actually go in and do inside the tool, and then personalizing their journey from there. So then you could have a B2B track four operations people with a team who take step A, and then you could have a B2B track for operations people who are solo who take step A, right? And then you can just see this like little web start to form. And that's to me how you can personalize at scale. And it's just taking a look and saying, what are all the different options? How do we need to speak to them? And like, what do they actually care about via what they've told us through their onboarding forms and the actions that they've actually taken inside the tool? Um, and that really allows you to scale without having to pull in just their name. Like if personalization, that's like the very first place to start, obviously. But just like starting to move from there and seeing like, okay, now how can we just like start splitting people off into like the groups that they kind of belong into?
I love that. I never thought
Yeah.
about that before. And that's because I'm not an email specialist. I write emails occasionally, for my
Hmm.
clients, but I'm not like deep into it like you are there. And I think that's really cool how you're like start broad and then start like, just picking different groups and then personalizing, like you're pruning a plant or a tree or something, right?
Yeah.
So I really, really like that. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that funnel visual, Jess, and the idea of those different like buckets that you're moving through and then getting more and more specific. And I think that's an interesting contrast between SaaS and, for example, like the coaching and course creator industry, because typically in my industry, that segmentation has already happened. Like by the time you get to the offer level, it's not for both. It's for that one specific person. And so when I think about keeping the human touch at scale, one of my like go-to techniques, which you actually mentioned, is using that form data to personalize the marketing messages to exactly what that buyer has told you, or prospect if you're talking like top of funnel, but to exactly what they've told you. And so like Typeform, one of my favorite tools for this, actually published a report recently about zero party data being so useful and one of the most reliable forms of data we're going to have about our users going forward. Meaning, right, taking exactly what your user or your buyer has told you about themselves and personalizing with that. So I think it's a great technique because it undercuts the creepiness. You're not using tracking. And really it is if we think about that level of priorities, it's easy for a business owner to implement whether they're just starting out or they're really established because it's just you're already getting that information, right? If like the coaches I'm working with already have an intake form, it's just about not keeping that data in a spreadsheet that you refer to on a coaching call, but actually utilizing that data to help drive a marketing ROI and sales ROI because you are able to send more intentional, more supportive, more informed messages to your users. It's my
A
soapbox.
100%. 100%. And I think the coaching industry, if I'm honest, which is why I'm so excited that that's your niche, I think that they could use so much more personalization, especially when it comes to emails, that I think there's so much opportunity there because largely people just aren't using it in that industry. So yeah, I think there's so much opportunity there.
So much ROI waiting to be had.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything we want to add before I bring us into the hot or not section where I give us some techniques to react to. We can say whether we think they're hot or not, a la 90s MTV show.
I
No,
think
I
we're
think I'm good.
same.
All right.
I'm excited for this segment.
Me too.
Okay, cool. Um, okay, wait, where am I going here? So, hot or not, live reactions to today's personalization trends. Let me bring up the trends. And actually, I want you guys here with me. So let's take us back to this view. Do you guys remember Hot or Not? Does that like when I referenced that is
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember the website. Is that what you're referring to?
yeah, and I
Like
guess
there was this.
oh no, you know what? I was thinking about the MTV show where it was like five guys on a bus and they would like
Oh,
get off the bus and then and then the woman would be like, next and send
And the
you
Go
woman
next.
was like
That's what that was called. It was
down a
called next.
football field, basically. And she would be
Yeah.
watching from so far away and she'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Or she'd be like, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Okay,
gosh.
so I've got 15 types of personalization. We don't have to like go deep on each one. We can do, if you have additional thoughts, feel free to add them. But okay, personalization tactic, hot or not, or depends. Number one, first name subject lines.
Not. It's
Mid,
it's
mid.
it's done. It's cooked.
Number two, we saw you looking at retargeting ads.
Hmm.
We've talked about this one a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely not not
Oh,
hot.
really? I love when products follow me around the internet because then it convinces me to buy.
Oh,
Okay, so we
well, if
like
they're following
retargeting
that,
ads. We don't like we saw you looking.
yeah, exactly. I
Oh,
don't
the
like that.
actual verbiage of we saw you looking.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm, I would say no, but I don't care. I don't mind them.
We can do better, I think is the
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah. AI generated onboarding emails.
No. No. That is ice.
Ice cold. Okay, predictive upsells.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hot.
I mean, I don't see why not. Honestly,
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's good.
I like this
Yeah. Don't waste that opportunity.
exactly.
Totally.
Okay, I have strong feelings about this one. Dynamic pricing based on browsing behavior.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I
This is
think
the
that's
dark side.
yeah, that's the dark
Illegal.
side. For oh
Straight to
yeah,
jail.
that's
Thank you.
and it's just gosh, why would you do that to somebody? I think that's just wrong.
No, and I mean, I feel like this could be a whole other episode because it's like the internet's already fragmenting our perception of reality. We don't need the price of like a plane ticket to change based
Totally.
on what big data knows about us. No, thank you.
Yep.
Well, and
Okay.
grocery stores want to start implementing dynamic pricing so that when a lot of people are in a store and going to buy something, it becomes more expensive. When it's off peak hours, things are less expensive. And so I just think this is a horrible slippery slope.
I didn't
Mhm.
realize grocery stores needed another way to profit gouge me. I thought they were already doing a great job of that already.
Oh, I know. Like if Galen Weston has no haters, I'm dead. You know?
Okay. Time of day. Oh, wait, this is okay. Time of day or time zone optimized send times.
I mean, I'm doing it. I don't know if it's good or not, but I think it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I would like to see the data behind that because to me, I'm gonna open an email if I'm gonna open it regardless of when it was sent.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I also don't have notifications for emails on my phone, so I will never get those drop downs of like when I'm actually active. So maybe that's just a me thing. Katie, what do you think?
I mean, I am doing this like manually in terms of I try to schedule my emails for when I think people are most likely to read them. But I will say sometimes I am really surprised. Like I'll get a response and I'm like, oh, well, who knew that 3:30 p.m. on a Wednesday is when this person was gonna read this email. So
Hmm.
maybe there's a more like intelligent way of doing that. But yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I wouldn't say not, just
Yeah,
it's still kind
just
of
depends.
yeah.
Yeah, and if I can add, I've worked with some companies who they don't want to send their onboarding emails on a weekend.
Mhm.
And so, no matter where you're at in the onboarding flow, if it's a Saturday or Sunday, they're not getting them. And I would make the argument that, okay, if this person is in corporate, and this goes back to personalization, if this person's in corporate and they're actually not in their inbox on the weekends, sure. But if through onboarding we find out they're like a solo founder, these people are working weekends. We should be emailing them at that time. So again, it's like obviously it depends and it goes back to what do you know about your customer?
Totally, 100%.
Totally.
Because I agree. Because I work in e-commerce and I'm noticing that people aren't opening their emails as much on the weekends, which is kind of surprising because you think, oh, well, they have all this time on the weekend, but really they're out doing things. So
Mm,
that's pretty interesting.
that is
Oh,
interesting.
well,
Yeah.
so going back to what we were talking about dynamic pricing, I buy my kids' clothes almost exclusively on the H&M app because it has the best user experience of all like kids' clothing stores that I found. And
Okay.
H&M consistently will have a 25% off sale on the
Hmm.
weekend, right? It's like I'll browse during the week, but
Hmm.
then I go on the weekend and I actually do the purchase because I'll have that 25% off coupon and the big like banner of counting down how much time is left until that sale goes away.
Makes
However,
me,
they have definitely trained me to fill my cart during the week and check out on the weekend.
huh.
So,
I have
on there.
two carts right now filled that I'm waiting for Friday to be like, you're gonna run a sale. All this is gonna be 20% off.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
So,
maybe an additional note there just on market sophistication and awareness of
Yeah.
these kind of marketing tactics should
mhm.
probably factor in to your plans. All right, last one. Um, we touched on this a little bit, but AI personalized thank you videos. So how do we feel about AI videos where we are inserting the person's name? Like you film the video, then you insert that person's name to make it feel like it's a one-to-one video just for them.
Hmm.
No.
I've
No?
never experienced that. I've never seen that yet. How do I feel about it? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. We're moving towards AI right now. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more of that. I definitely can see why Jess would be like, no, because it's not very personal then if it's AI, right? So I don't know where I stand there, honestly, right now.
I mean, honestly, I feel
Hmm.
like I would rather a real video of the real person that has my name spliced in than a fully AI video, period.
Yeah, I think
Like
I can
Hmm.
agree with that.
if
If
you
it, yeah,
sat down and filmed it and all you did was like the AI says my name instead of
yeah,
Jess's name or Cody's name, I can live
totally.
with that.
Yeah,
But I
totally.
want
And
to
I
know
think it would get me if it was like so obvious where I was like, hey, thank you so much for signing up. And then my mouth kept moving,
oh,
and then a robot came in and was like, Katie, I would be like, that's hilarious because you're not trying to dupe me. And I think that's what a lot of AI drives me nuts is it's like, do you think that people are falling for this? And clearly they are, like that bunnies on the trampoline video, like that everybody fell for. So it is working on some people, but for me, I guess I'm very much like, you think you're tricking me? You're not.
I love it. Um, I think it's almost like that goes back to our foundational premise for this video is really knowing your audience well. How will they react to the tactic? How sophisticated are they? How aware are they of, different marketing tactics, like different launch flows, and tailoring whatever you decide is best for your business to that one person that you most want to convert.
Hmm.
Mhm. I agree.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think this was great. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Okay, Jess, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they
Yes.
find you?
You can find me at openloopstudio.co. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm Jess Haney Copy on LinkedIn. And you can also email me hello@openloopstudio.co.
Thanks so much. And Cody, what about you?
Yeah, if you want to find me, you can find me at www.codismith.com. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, also at Codi Smith.
Thank you so much. And I am at Post Sale Profit Studio everywhere, here on YouTube, Instagram, and postsaleprofitstudio.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jess and Cody, and looking forward to being back for the next episode of Hot Copy. Oh,